Delegations from the United States and Iran are set to begin the first direct high-level talks between the two countries since 1979 in Pakistan's capital. Iran's delegation, led by Parliament Speaker Mohammad Baqir Ghalibaf and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, arrived in Islamabad early Saturday. They were received by Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar, Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir, and senior government officials. The US delegation, led by Vice President J.D. Vance, is also heading to Islamabad with officials from the White House, State Department, and Pentagon. Pakistan is hosting the talks after helping broker a 2-week ceasefire earlier this week, ending nearly 6 weeks of war between the US, Israel, and Iran. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif says the negotiations are a make or break moment that could determine whether the conflict moves towards peace or slides back into escalation.
आरजी जंग बंदी का ऐलान हो चुका, मगर अब उससे भी ज़्यादा कठिन मरहला वो देर पा जंग बंदी का है। वो मुज़ाकरात के ज़रिए उलझे हुए मसाइल को हल करने का है। और ये मरहला जिसको अंग्रेज़ी में कहते हैं मेक और ब्रेक के मतवाज़ी है। मैं आप सब इंतहाई काबिल एहतराम बुज़ुर्गों, माँओं, बहनों और भाइयों को दरख्वास्त करूँगा कि आप अल्लाह ताला के हज़ूर दुआ करें कि रब्बे ज़ुल जलाल इन मुज़ाकरात को अपनी कमाल मेहरबानी से कामयाब फरमाए और इस तरह अनगिनत मासूम जिंदगियां बच जाएंगी और दुनिया में अमन कायम हो जाएगा।
But even before the talks start, a major dispute has emerged. Iran says it will only fully participate if Israeli attacks on Lebanon stop and frozen Iranian assets are released. Tehran insists that the ceasefire must apply across all fronts, including Hezbollah in Lebanon. The United States and Israel disagree. They say Lebanon was never part of the ceasefire, creating a gap that nearly derailed the Islamabad meeting.
I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states.
After intense back-channel diplomacy involving Pakistan and regional actors, Israel reportedly paused strikes in Beirut and its southern suburbs, one of Iran's key demands. But Israeli attacks have continued elsewhere in southern Lebanon, where at least 23 people are killed. But despite the diplomatic push, tensions remain high. President Donald Trump warned that if negotiations fail, the US military is prepared to escalate. He also accused Iran of using control over the Strait of Hormuz, a critical global oil shipping route, as leverage.
No, we're not going to let that. It's international water. If they're doing that, nobody knows if they're doing that, but if they're doing that, we're not going to let that happen.
What would a good deal look like for you?
No nuclear weapon, number one. You know, I think it's already been regime change, but we never had that as a criteria. No nuclear weapon. That's 99% of it.
Iran's military responded with its own warning, saying its forces have their fingers on the trigger after what it called repeated breaches of trust. Meanwhile, Kuwait said it intercepted 7 Iranian drones entering its airspace in the past 24 hours. The negotiations themselves are expected to be complex. They are loosely based on a 10-point Iranian proposal, but major disagreements remain. Washington is expected to push for limits on Iran's nuclear program. Iran, in turn, is demanding sanctions relief, access to frozen assets, and guarantees over navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. Other difficult issues include missile programs, regional proxy groups, and how both sides sequence concessions. Analysts say the 2-day meeting is unlikely to produce a breakthrough. Instead, the goal may simply be to create a path for longer negotiations and prevent the war from reigniting.
If the talks succeed, there would be a statement. And as I said, that the minimum or the best case scenario that everyone right now is expecting is the extension of ceasefire. And for that, there would be a communique. If the talks fail, certainly we are not going to have any communique. They have both sides are bringing in their own press corps Islamabad's press corps has also registered with the Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Information for covering this event. So everybody would be looking forward to a communique by a joint communique if the talks succeed, or at least there would be individual statements in case the talks fail.
For now, the arrival of both delegations in Islamabad marks a rare diplomatic opening. But with fighting still ongoing in Lebanon, tensions in the Gulf, and deep mistrust between Washington and Tehran, the talks begin under intense pressure. The world will be watching what happens next.